Round 1 between the Kings and Warriors was the best chess match in NBA history. With both teams running similar offensive systems, Steve Kerr and Mike Brown knew they had to be extra creative if they wanted to win the series. So today I'm going to break down the main tactics from each game and how each coach decided to counter each other. Going into the series, the Kings were playing their first playoff series since 2006 against the reigning champs in the Golden State Warriors. On paper, it looked like the Warriors had a huge competitive advantage because they were the more talented and experienced team. But Sacramento's familiarity with the Warriors' offense gave them an edge that other teams didn't have. The Kings hired Mike Brown, who had worked for 6 years with the Warriors as an assistant coach, to reinvent their offense by specifically implementing the Warriors' main offensive principles. In the 2023 regular season, we saw the Kings incorporate more overall movement into their offense, whether it was using Kevin Huerter as a Klay Thompson 2.0 to get open threes, or incorporating split actions to confuse defenses and create more wide open shots. Due to the similarities in offensive principles, both teams knew that they were essentially playing mirrors of themselves, which then required more out-of-the-box thinking to really gain an edge in this series. And it started in Game 1 with Mike Brown trying the unthinkable. In the first half, the Warriors and Kings used some beautiful ball movement to stress the respective defense and generate easy looks. With both teams touted as the highest scoring teams in the regular season, it was no surprise that the game started out fast and competitive. But in the midst of the high-scoring first half, the Warriors were slowly gaining control towards the end of the second quarter because Sabonis was having a hard time guarding the pick and roll, which created a dilemma for the Kings. For Sacramento, they wanted to keep Sabonis in the game, especially for his offensive playmaking. This meant they needed to figure out how Sabonis could stay in the paint on the defensive end so he wasn't involved in the Warriors' primary offensive actions. And Mike Brown thought the best way in that moment was to run a box-and-one on Steph Curry in the third quarter. When the Raptors ran a box-and-one in the NBA Finals, they were able to be effective because the Warriors didn't have the shooting to dissect the defense, specifically Klay or Kevin Durant, to deviate the attention from Steph Curry. This meant they could afford to sell out to Curry and leave at least one Warrior open. The Kings don't have that benefit with the Warriors having a full roster, so focusing on Steph had some potential consequences, such as leaving Klay or another shooter open. But they thought that putting perimeter players such as Fox in the middle of the floor would give them a better chance of defending any pick and roll actions since they are quicker and can switch more easily. This meant Sabonis could be in the corner as help in case the Warriors got in the paint, so the Kings decided to risk it. The Warriors countered immediately by having Steph run the double drag since it would force the Kings to draw two players on him and create opportunities for open shots. The Kings coach picks this up and yells double drag at the free throw line. The Warriors run the double drag and they're anticipating De'Aaron Fox to help on Curry, which could free up Klay Thompson for a potential three. But Huerter fights the screen well and Fox is able to recover to Klay. Fox tells Keegan Murray to get back onto Klay, and Steph tries to throw a cross-court pass and gets intercepted. The Warriors run this again, but this time it's to have Draymond Green attack the middle of the floor. With Gary Payton in the corner, Barnes can collapse and will happily give up this three. While the double drag didn't work initially, the Warriors made a few tweaks that worked better. In a box-and-one, the defender guarding Curry will be completely attached to him. So to open up more space for other ball handlers in the pick and roll, the Warriors instead ran the double drag with Curry as a screener. Poole is able to find space since Monk is trailing behind him, Barnes has to come over to help, and while the Kings are in rotation, it opens up a wide open shot for Jordan Poole. But on the next play the Warriors ran this, the Kings switched to pick and roll and had Barnes stay on Curry, which stagnated the possession and ended with a Wiggins semi-contested three. So instead of bringing in a third guy to screen, the Warriors ran a Klay-Steph pick and roll to get Klay in open three. Fox tries to tell Davion Mitchell to switch, but his focus was purely on Steph, so Klay gets an open shot. Another thing the Warriors tried to counter the box-and-one was the short action. They had a similar setup as the double drag, except Draymond is on the wing instead of screening. Steve Kerr tells DiVincenzo to screen because when Curry runs the pick and roll, remember that Barnes' only focus is to stick with Steph. DiVincenzo sets a good screen, so Fox is worried about helping Barnes out, which lets Dante get a free lane to the basket. Overall, the box and one was not the most perfect strategy, but it did two things. First, Sabonis was not in the primary action, so the Warriors had to be more creative to break down the zone. Two, it broke down the Warriors' offensive rhythm just enough to help the Kings close the gap and stay in the game, which leads us to the last minute of the game. During a free throw, Steve Kerr calls his play called thumb out, where Curry would run a pick and roll, throw the ball to the wing, and play off of that. But instead, Curry sees Monk as a mismatch, goes right to the basket, and finishes around the rim. With the lead down to 1, the Kings put the ball in Fox's hands and he drives into the lane and fades away, but he misses. With Green and Sabonis getting a little too intimate on the ground, Curry runs the pick and roll, which gets Wiggins a wide open 3, but he misses it and the Kings are able to escape with a victory. So going into game 2, the Kings had to figure out if they could continue going box and one to slow down the Warriors, or figure out how to better react to the pick and rolls when they're targeting Sabonis in man defense. And they were able to sustain the momentum by discovering a flaw in the Warriors' offense. In game 2, the Warriors wanted to continue attacking Sabonis in the pick and roll, but the Kings countered by aggressively trapping Steph Curry due to the Warriors' poor spacing. While the Kings are giving the Warriors a 4-on-3 advantage, they're able to nullify that advantage by clogging the paint because the Warriors are playing with 2 non-shooters. Here, Curry runs a pick and roll with Looney, and now he's in the middle on a 2-on-1. Draymond's cutting because he's ready for a potential layup, but Keegan Murray as the wing defender sells out to Draymond and the Kings get a steal. Next possession down, the Warriors try the same thing again, and Barnes and Murray sink down to Green. Looney tries a floater and he gets called for an offensive foul for a push in the back. Regardless of who's setting the screen, the Warriors face similar challenges. Here, the Warriors go back to the Steph Dre pick and roll because Green's a better playmaker, but with Wiggins cutting to the rim and Looney in the paint, Sabonis is able to cover both guys and break the pass up. The Warriors tried again a few minutes later, but the Kings switched this pick and roll perfectly and it ends up with a Draymond 3. The Kings' anticipation of the Warriors' tendencies really helped set a tone for the game, and it made it hard for the Warriors to gain some early offensive rhythm. So the Warriors stopped trying to run pick and rolls altogether and instead implemented more off-ball movement. Here, Curry comes off the off-ball screen, but it's a decoy to get Klay Thompson to come off the same screen. Since the Warriors know that the Kings are going to blitz, Thompson feeds it to Looney and he gets a dunk. Next time down, the Kings adjust by having Mitchell top block Steph Curry and having Sabonis drop back because Looney can't shoot. So Steve Kerr calls a timeout and draws up a beautiful inbound play. Curry throws it to Green, which flows into an empty side dribble handoff for Jordan Poole. Now it looks like a normal pick and roll action, but the difference is that Curry is the one that's running to the corner. So Mitchell, who's usually the one that's going to help on this paint cut, is laser focused on Curry, which opens up Gary Payton for a dunk. And this was just the beginning of the chess match within the chess match. In the second quarter, the Warriors give the Kings a taste of their own medicine as they try to run a dribble handoff with Keegan Murray, but he gets top blocked by DiVincenzo, which leads to a whole lot of nothing and Sabonis taking a pretty tough layup. So Mike Brown, seeing that Keegan Murray had a hard time executing the dribble handoff, decides to swap him out for Malik Monk, who's more shifty. In addition, Brown also wanted to include a screener to make the dribble handoff easier. Here, Gary Payton top blocks Malik Monk, but Davion Mitchell sets the screen, which helps Monk get around the top block much easier. They're able to run the dribble handoff, and Sabonis gets an and one. The other person that was also trying to think ahead as much as possible was De'Aaron Fox. So even though he's on the free throw line, he notices that Steve Kerr's calling a play, and you could see him stare in Steve Kerr's direction. He gives instructions to the Kings players about what's coming up and what to do. And the Kings were completely ready for this double drag screen. Harrison Barnes sinks really early into the paint to stop any initial penetration, and this forces Gary Payton to take a corner 3. Fox was even a bigger problem in the pick and roll. While the Warriors were okay with him shooting since he only shoots 33% from 3, he was still able to get into the paint and knock down floaters. Fox was continuously punishing them with the floater, whether it was through the pick and roll or in isolation, and these were shots that the Warriors could live with because they didn't want Fox to drive to the rim. Malik Monk was also a huge thorn in the Warriors' defense, especially with the pick and roll over the first 2 games because they didn't really know how to contain him. When they dropped, Monk was able to consistently hit threes and get to the rim and finish with his great body control. When they trapped him, he was able to find the open man, specifically the screener diving to the rim. Because Fox and Monk were able to get into the lane to do different things to punish the Warriors, they had to figure out how to stop the initial penetration. And so midway through the third quarter, Warriors assistant coach Kenny Atkinson suggests a 2-1-2 zone, as you can see Draymond Green showing this with his fingers. With 3 defenders on the front line, it was much harder for Fox or Monk to get any initial penetration on the pick and roll. This forced them to swing the ball side to side and have other teammates beat the defenders off the dribble. And because the other 3 guys had a harder time getting past, the Kings eventually had to settle for a lot of tougher shots, and the Warriors were able to gain momentum in the game with this 2-1-2 zone. But that took a turn in the fourth quarter when Draymond Green stomped on Sabonis' chest and got himself ejected. This meant the Warriors were left with fewer options on how to guard the pick and roll since Looney is not as versatile of a defender as Green. So instead of sticking with the zone, the Warriors decided to go back to their man coverage and try to have Looney come up a bit higher to better contest Fox's floater. This eventually didn't work because Fox was still able to make tough floaters and wide open jumpers. On top of that, the Kings players executed some perfectly timely cuts that opened up more space for Fox and themselves. With Fox on fire, the Warriors decided to bring a third defender to provide more support. Here, Barnes was able to take advantage of that by cutting to the rim when Curry tried helping. Next possession down, Davion Mitchell knows that Curry really wants to help guard Fox, so Mitchell cuts to bring him away, which opens up a wide open look for Fox. So to prevent Fox from making decisions in these scenarios, the Warriors decided to trap him, which forces him to make longer passes under constant pressure, although he was still able to make the pass, and Barnes was able to take advantage of the late rotation and get to the rim. Now on this next possession, Gary Payton tells Looney to trap to Fox's right. Knowing that the Warriors are trapping, Fox sets up by dribbling left, which gets Looney's motion moving to his left, and now he's able to drive to the rim to his right. Even though he can't finish, Sabonis can get deep in the paint and he finishes over Looney. With none of these strategies working, the Warriors decide to go back to the 2-1-2 zone in desperation. Looney is much slower than Draymond, so he's forced to drop back more than the Warriors would like. Because of this, Curry has to clog Fox's driving gap in the pick and roll and rotate back to the wing on a pass. Fox knows this, so he draws Curry in and passes it to Barnes, who's able to finish with a nice floater. And that's how the Kings were able to take a 2-0 series lead, by being able to recognize how the Warriors were defending them and making on-court adjustments. For the Warriors, figuring out how to slow down Fox and Monk seemed quite difficult, especially with Draymond out for the next game, but they were able to find an answer. In Game 3, the Warriors had to adjust their defensive strategy on Fox and Monk because they didn't have their defensive anchor. This meant that they needed to rely on everyone on the court even more to ensure that Fox and Monk did not get to the rim at will. To do that, the Warriors provided additional support on Fox and Monk drives by having multiple people sitting in their driving gaps. On the dribble handoff, Monk is able to get it to Sabonis, but Moody sinks down to help and strips him. This makes Sabonis tell Lyles to keep moving because he wants Moody out of the picture so he has more space to work with. The Kings take Sabonis' advice when he's out of the game. Here, Fox tries running a wing pick and roll and Davis cuts to the other side to give Fox more space. But instead of going with Davis, DiVincenzo stays in the middle of the paint to provide more support, and you see 5 Warriors just surrounding Fox. He's forced to kick it out to Lyles, who's not as great at getting his own shot. To open up more space in the middle, the Kings try running horns, which are pick and rolls on both sides for Fox to see if he can turn the corner. In response, the Warriors switch to pick and roll and Wiggins sits right in his driving gap, but he gets called for a foul. Regardless of what the Kings try to open up space, the Warriors' number one focus was to clog Fox and Monk's driving gaps all night, especially since they had relied on the pick and roll so much in the first 2 games. And that's because the Warriors constantly disrupted one of the Kings' main offensive sets, the dribble handoff, through top blocking. That way, the Warriors can dictate what the Kings are doing. Here, DiVincenzo does a great job of top blocking, so Monk has a hard time getting the ball. Once Monk gets the ball, the Warriors ice the pick and roll, so they're forcing Monk to drive to his right, which helps them anticipate the Kings' next move. Monk's only option then is to throw it to Davion Mitchell, and he does knock down the 3, but this is a shot that you can live with. Here, DiVincenzo does a great job again top blocking Monk, and once Monk gets the ball, he drives into the paint and he sprays it out to Barnes, who knocks down the 3. But again, this is a shot that the Warriors will live with. Now the Kings did have a few counters. DiVincenzo is top blocking Herter, and instead of trying to fight over the screen, he instead curls around through the paint, and with a Sabonis screen, Herter is able to get a much better look at the rim. In the second quarter, Sabonis is looking for a Fox dribble handoff. Wiggins does a great job top blocking Fox, but Curry doesn't anticipate Herter using the dribble handoff. So now Herter, who initially was supposed to set the screen, instead uses the dribble handoff and he knocks down this wide open 3. But you can't fool a great player twice. Keegan Murray tries to run off the away action, but Curry does a great job top blocking. Now Murray shoots at the other side and Malik Monk tries to use a screen, but Curry gets on top of him, no homo, and he's able to get a deflection on the pass. Even just from this one play, it requires so much discipline and effort to continue top blocking and fighting over screens, which helped the Warriors slow down the Kings' offense without Draymond Green on the floor. Where Golden State really benefited in this game was on the offensive end, as they could plug another shooter into the lineup, which opened up more space in the paint. In Game 2, Draymond often played with either Gary Payne or Kevon Looney, which allowed Sacramento to collapse more aggressively in the paint. This meant Golden State had a much harder time attacking the paint to their advantage. But replacing Green with another shooter into more lineups opened up the opportunity for the Warriors to put their big men on the perimeter, because that would pull out the Kings centers and open up more space in the paint. The Kings wanted to counter by top blocking, but were not as effective as the Warriors. So here, Fox does a good job top blocking Curry, so the Warriors convert this action into a dribble handoff. Once Looney gets the ball, Fox loses position on Curry, so he's able to take the dribble handoff and attack Sabonis. Here, Monk does not do a good job top blocking, so Clay is able to use the screen, which puts the Kings defense in rotation, and Poole gets a wide open 3. So Mitchell is guarding DiVincenzo, but he relaxes for a second. Dante then cuts the ball, and now he gets ahead of Davion. This forces the help, which allows Moody to get an easy dunk. So the differences in discipline and effort really changed the complexity of this game and helped the Warriors get back in the series. The one thing that the Warriors also tried that you should look out for as the series progresses is attacking Keegan Murray in the pick and roll to see how he reacted, specifically using some slips or some pick and fades. So here the play breaks down, Poole comes and sets a screen, but he slips it and a foul gets called. Steve Kerr then calls for rub, which is basically just hunting Keegan Murray. Knowing that Poole slipped the first time, Murray decides to hold Poole so that he can't slip the screen, and he accepts the switch. He actually does a pretty good job on Curry, and he misses the shot. Now, knowing that Keegan Murray is going to hold Jordan Poole, Curry smartly uses Poole as a screen to get deep penetration, and he sprays it out to Clay, but he just misses the 3. The Warriors were likely experimenting to see how Murray would react, and it's an important factor that comes up as the series goes on. Overall, the Warriors were able to win Game 3 without Draymond Green because they were able to limit Fox and Monk's ability to get deep in the paint by showing multiple bodies continuously. When the Kings tried using the dribble handoffs to score, the Warriors continued to shut those actions down because they were disciplined enough to top block and navigate screens. On the offensive end, the absence of Draymond Green opened up the opportunity for Golden State to play with one non-shooter on the floor. This adjustment forced the Kings to stay attached to potential shooters, which opened up more space for others to attack. Going into Game 4, the biggest concern for Golden State was whether or not Draymond Green's lack of shooting would hurt them offensively. For Sacramento, they had to figure out how to find more counters against the top block defense that really hurt them in Game 3. And to address these concerns, both teams relied on some unexpected players to engineer their offenses. In Game 4, the Kings went to Keegan Murray despite the fact that he had scored a total of 10 points through the first 3 games. Since he had so much trouble finding any offensive rhythm, Golden State tried to hide Jordan Poole onto Keegan Murray to start Game 4. In response, the Kings wanted Keegan Murray to be aggressive because he had such a size advantage, and Poole's not the most disciplined defender. Poole is attached to Murray, and Keegan takes the dribble handoff and is able to dribble into the paint and knocks down this jumper. Just a minute later, Poole is not attached to Murray, and so he gets a clean look off this dribble handoff, but he just misses the three. Later in the first, Murray is in the paint and he becomes a screener to get Sabonis deeper post position. Poole gets caught reaching on Sabonis, so he kicks it out to Murray and he knocks down his first three of the series. Next time down, the Warriors try to run a 3-2 zone to stop any dribble handoffs. With all the attention on Fox, Murray cuts from the wing into the paint and he gets fouled by Draymond. Here, Curry is expecting Herter to get a dribble handoff, so he wants to cut him off, but Murray sets a flare screen to get Herter cutting to the rim. This allows Keegan Murray to get the dribble handoff, and with his newfound confidence, he uses Sabonis' screen and knocks down the mid-range. Throughout the first three games, the Kings had a hard time getting Kevin Herter some open looks from that top block defense, but they were able to effectively use Keegan Murray to run these dribble handoffs, and this is how the Kings were able to develop some offensive rhythm in the early aspects of this game. They also did a great job pushing the pace, especially after made baskets to open up more space for everyone else. Sabonis has the ball and Clay, who would typically be top blocking Herter, is not in position, so Kevin Herter can take the dribble handoff and get deep in the paint. Here, Fox pushes the pace and there's three Warriors tracking him down to make sure he can't get into the paint. Now with him being doubled, this leaves Barnes open in the corner and he's able to finish around the rim. Next possession down, Malik Monk pushes the pace before pulling it back, but now Gary Payton, who's supposed to be the third guy helping on the pick and roll, is focused on Fox. So Monk and Sabonis run the pick and roll, and Sabonis is able to get deep post position and a layup. Because the Kings use Keegan Murray for dribble handoffs and push the pace more often, they were able to take a 69-65 lead going into halftime. With the Kings in an offensive rhythm, it looked like they were on the brink of taking a 3-1 series lead. But in the second half, the Warriors snatched the momentum and it was engineered by Draymond Green. The Kings had slowed down the Warriors' offense at times because they have been able to sag off Draymond to cover other gaps. Since Green knew that the Kings were going to continue daring him to make plays, he knew that he needed to be more aggressive in order to punish the Kings. Clay comes off this flare screen and Green rolls to the cup, and even though he doesn't make the shot, it's one that he knows he needs to take. Next possession, Green's in the corner and he does the fake dribble handoff and he gets a dunk. Here, Green initiates the offense. The Kings focus on helping out Davion Mitchell since he's locked on Kevon Looney. As Green sees the wide open paint, he cuts in and he misses the floater, but he's able to get the offensive rebound and also puts it back up before yelling in Fox's ear. His antics are annoying as hell, but it's what he has to do with the Kings basically disrespecting him. The Kings then play a box and one again to give the Warriors a different look. Green knows that there's going to be wide open space when he has the ball, so he drives in and gets Looney a dunk. The Warriors grabbed the lead and were able to sustain the momentum, which gave them a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter. But Sacramento responded in the fourth by getting back to what they were doing in the first half, whether it was pushing the pace in transition or making threes off triple handoffs. Using their athleticism and shot making, the Kings were on the verge of closing this game out until their most reliable offense became their worst enemy. With Green back in the game, he made his impact with his transition defense that helped slow down the Kings' offensive surge. The Kings have a 5-on-4 in transition, which opens up a 2-on-1 in the paint. Sabonis tries to drive into Draymond's chest, but he strips it. A few minutes later, the Kings see the same opportunity. Sabonis is initiating the break, and Barnes tries challenging Green at the rim with no success. Once Sabonis has the ball, Green challenges again, and the Warriors are able to get another stop. The Kings also committed some silly turnovers by Fox and Monk in transition, whether it was throwing it off Draymond's head or out of bounds that stagnated their momentum. And all of this leads us to the last 20 seconds of the game. With the Warriors up 1 and the shot clock in their favor, Curry makes the mistake of going early and he misses the floater. But with the Kings' poor transition offense through the last few minutes, Mike Brown decides to call timeout and draw up a play. In the huddle, Sabonis says have it wide open, which is alluding to the idea of giving Fox as much space as possible to get the shot that he wants. In the Warriors huddle, Atkinson tells Draymond that they want to set up a trap so Fox doesn't have a chance to shoot the ball. On the inbound, that's exactly what happens. Fox gets the ball and everyone clears out. Atkinson yells at Curry to trap and he gets out in front of Barnes, which is a lot higher than he normally does when guarding the pick and roll. Fox uses Barnes' screen, but Curry does a good job of taking that initial hit so Fox can't turn the corner. Then he funnels Fox into Green and he helps on the drive, which forces Fox to pass to Barnes, and you know the rest.
Hunting Curry. He's got Curry on the switch. Fox over to Barnes for the lead. And that's it. The Warriors survive.
So Warriors legend Harrison Barnes misses a three that would have given the Kings a 3-1 series lead, and we're headed back to Sacramento tied at 2 games apiece. In a pivotal Game 5, the Kings started out with a bang by making their first 8 out of 12 3-pointers in the first quarter, and this came through numerous ways, whether it was a Fox pull-up or a Keegan Murray dribble handoff. With the Kings hitting so many 3-pointers, it was crucial for the Warriors to stay in the game with consistent offense, which they got through a dribble handoff or an empty side pick and roll. Knowing that the Kings would continue to overplay their guards because they wanted to test Kevon Looney's playmaking, the Warriors knew that they could continue getting 4-on-3 advantages. For example, Jordan Poole takes the dribble handoff and he runs a pick and roll with Kevon Looney. Once Barnes sinks down, Andrew Wiggins is open and his layup gets goaltended. The biggest difference between Game 2, where the Kings had so much more success guarding the pick and roll compared to Game 5, was the spacing. In Game 2, Looney was also the main role guy, but Wiggins and Green in the paint made playmaking much more difficult for him. In Game 5, the Warriors had Draymond come off the bench to open up more space, and with Klay and Steph being lethal 3-point shooters, Wiggins will have more room to get open. The Warriors ran this about 5 to 6 times in the first quarter, which is how they were able to hold on when the Kings were shooting really well from the 3-point line, because they were taking advantage of the Kings' overplay with much better spacing. Because of this, the Kings pivoted to a semi-drop coverage for the first time instead of overplaying these pick and rolls. The Kings were content with having a guard chase Klay Thompson around and living with the result, which didn't really work in that second quarter. Here, Klay takes a dribble handoff from Draymond, and Barnes sinks down in case he rolls to the basket, which gives Klay a clean look from 3. A couple minutes later, Klay Thompson runs the double drag screen, and Sabonis, who usually would be a little higher, drops down just a little bit, which gives Klay another clean look from 3. And now that Klay has found his stroke, he now takes a 30-footer and he buries it to help the Warriors square this game at 50. But the biggest game changer was Draymond, who took on the challenge of attacking Sabonis individually in Game 5. It felt like he knew that Sabonis could not keep up with him and took the matchup a little more personally. Draymond was able to get a couple of drives from this matchup and was able to finish around the rim, which was something that he wasn't able to do consistently in Game 4. Here, the Warriors run that empty ball screen with Klay and Draymond, and the Kings defend this well. So now Draymond has a one-on-one with Sabonis, the Warriors have Klay screen, and Draymond is able to finish around the rim. However you feel about Draymond's game or just him as a person, it's very clear that he's determined to do anything possible to help the Warriors win. Draymond had finally taken full advantage of the Kings, who had been sagging off of him all series long, by finding driving lanes all night to the point where he started knocking down Dirk fadeaways in the fourth quarter. In addition, he also engineered some great passing sequences in the third quarter. With the Kings overplaying Steph and Klay in case they got open for threes, the one thing that they could give up were backdoor cuts, which was something that the Warriors implemented in the third quarter. The Warriors extrapolated this concept by having all their bigs as facilitators because, again, it would pull away the Kings' big man from the basket, which opened up space for the Warriors' guards. Here, Looney is initiating a dribble handoff with Jordan Poole. Knowing that Herter is going to try to cut him off, he goes backdoor and he gets an easy layup. Now in the fourth, the Warriors decided to hunt Keegan Murray, which I mentioned in Game 3 that the Warriors tested as an experiment. It started at the 9-minute mark with Curry hunting Keegan Murray, and he's able to use his dribble to get to the rim. Once the Kings realized that the Warriors were doing this, they subbed Keegan Murray out immediately. With him out, they were still able to climb back in the game by relentlessly driving in the paint and drawing fouls. Simultaneously, Davion Mitchell was wearing down from chasing Curry around, so Mike Brown decided to go offense over defense down the stretch. With 3 minutes to go, Murray comes back in to bring the Kings more spacing to help them close the game. And this is the consequence you live with. On the 2-minute mark, Curry hunts Murray and is able to use his dribble to get past him. Now Barnes fakes out Curry, but he definitely should have slid in all the way and forced Draymond to hit another corner 3. Next possession down, Murray tries to hedge, but Curry is able to get around it and walks into a wide open 3, but he just misses it. On the next possession, Fox fights over the screen so Murray doesn't have to switch, and the Warriors transition to a Clay ball screen. The Kings do a great job pushing Clay outward so Looney can't go downhill. This gives Looney a 4-on-3, but he's not the greatest decision maker and gets called for the offensive foul. With the Kings down 3 and a chance to tie, Malik Monk gets a good look at a 3, but he misses, which gives the Warriors an opportunity to close the game. Instead of having Curry attack Keegan Murray, Wiggins initiates the offense and he rejects Curry's screen to isolate Murray. He goes to the beautiful spin to hit this nice fadeaway, which gives the Warriors a 5-point lead. And this is how the Warriors were able to use the Kings' defensive strategies against them and take a 3-2 series lead. For the Kings, they have lost 3 games in a row, and there was a sense that the Warriors had figured them out. If Sacramento wanted to force Game 7, they would need to at least figure out how to adjust their defense that was prone to giving up easy layups around the rim through ball screens or the backdoor cut. And Mike Brown needed to find an answer now to keep their season alive. To prevent easy shots in the paint, Mike Brown decided to go small at the end of the first quarter, specifically when Sabonis was out of the game. Instead of using Alex Len, he chose to put Trey Lyles at the 5 so that they could switch any ball screen. With more speed on the court, they didn't always have to trap on pick and rolls and instead relied on their athleticism, which was able to help them cover a lot of ground. Here, Green leads a semi-transition break and it looks like Wiggins has a free layup, but Lyles and Monk come out of nowhere and they get the block. In the pick and roll, Clay rejects a screen and Lyles mistakenly gives Clay his right hand, so Clay has a wide open path to the basket, but Barnes is there to fend off that drive and get a block. Jordan Poole puts a nice half spin on Fox that freezes Lyles so that he has a free lane to the basket, but Monk is there to clean it up. And what ended up happening was that the Warriors were forced to rely on isolations instead of the beautiful ball movement that you typically see. In Game 5, the Kings had often trap ball screens which open up personnel advantages and crisp ball movement. This puts a lot of pressure on the remaining help defenders to defend the rest of the possession. But by switching, it automatically nullifies this 4-on-3 advantage, which then forces the Warriors to beat their individual matchup off the dribble. While the Warriors can find mismatches, the Kings put more speed on the court to help cover any holes in the defense. The other way the Kings protected the paint was by taking charges, and I think this was something the Kings had discussed before Game 6 because of the Warriors' aggression in these 4-on-3 situations. Typically, teams are very hesitant to try and take charges because they're trying to cover 2 things at once, but if the roller is charging downhill, there is an opportunity to do this and the Kings were able to capitalize. But maybe more importantly, the Kings were able to go 5 out with Lyles at center, which opened up a ton of space for Fox and Monk. The Kings put Steph Curry in pick and roll situations and relentlessly attacked the basket to create more offense. As Steve Kerr noticed this, he decided to bring Looney back in the game to see if Kevon could punish Sacramento on the glass. Mike Brown took this as an opportunity to put Kevon Looney in pick and pop situations because he's a little slower than the other 4 Warriors. Here, Monk gets Looney on a switch and he's able to attack downhill for a layup. To prevent Looney from switching, Klay Thompson ices the pick and roll, but Monk just takes the open driving lane and brings Looney into the paint, so he kicks it out to Lyles for 3. After a timeout, Steve Kerr brings Gary Payton in to fend off Fox's speed, but Fox is able to run the pick and pop. This time Lyles fakes the 3 and gets to the rim. Steve Kerr then puts Looney on Terrence Davis because he's not a shooter. On this possession, Terrence Davis cuts and is able to get past him for the layup. Right after this, Steve Kerr took Kevon Looney out and put Draymond Green in so that there is more speed on the court and put the Kings in more heavy isolation situations. To counter that, the Kings used horns, which gave Fox the option to attack either Curry or Poole. Fox is able to attack and hits Keegan Murray for the open 3. Overall, this 5-out offense gave Fox and Monk the room to attack since they were shooting all over the court. Using their speed to stress the defense against specific mismatches like Curry, Poole, or Looney, the Warriors never figured out a consistent way to slow them down, which opened up more opportunities for the rest of the Kings' offense. With their backs against the wall, Sacramento played more aggressively and Golden State wasn't ready for it. And that's how this series saw a 7th game. The Warriors dynasty was at stake and they had shown all their cards. But for someone who understands what it takes to win, Curry was not ready to go home. Now, Steph Curry has never been the most vocal leader, but he sensed that he had to say something with the season on the line. Curry wanted everyone to put their egos aside and told anyone who was not locked in to stay home. In return, Curry promised that he would take it upon himself to carry the Warriors to victory. To set the tone for the game, the Warriors spammed the short action to take advantage of the hard traps when Curry would run the pick and roll because it would create many ways to confuse the defense. On this opening sequence, Curry throws it to Green, and Green throws it to a rolling Looney, and he gets a dunk. Next possession down, Curry repeats the sequence, and this time Fox is in the paint early to cover Looney, but Wiggins cuts from the baseline for a layup. When that didn't work, the Kings adjusted the pick and roll defense by having Sabonis soft trap. To counter that, Curry catches Sabonis off guard by throwing it to Looney, which turns into a dribble handoff and a wide open 3. After taking a break in the first quarter, Curry comes back in and runs the short action again. Knowing that Terrence Davis is trailing him and Sabonis is worried about Draymond, Curry accepts the dribble handoff from Gary Payton and is able to finish over Trey Lyles. With the Kings so concerned about the roll man getting open, Curry knew that he would get more isolation opportunities, which meant it was his time to take control. On the next pick and roll opportunity, Draymond doesn't screen because he knows Curry can attack individually, and Steph acts like he's going left, then uses the behind the back to get ahead of Davis and is able to finish with his right hand. Since the Kings could not bother Curry in the half court, they decided to pressure him 94 feet to try wearing him down. That backfires as Curry dribbles right past Terrence Davis and finishes with his left hand. With Curry in a rhythm, Steph goes back to the pick and roll to attack Keegan Murray, and he goes into the step back for 3. And it looked like the game was going to be a typical Curry takeover, but Sacramento fought back by creating consistent offense that kept them afloat. The Kings went back to the small ball lineup with Trey Lyles at the 5 to open up more space. In the beginning of the second quarter, Mike Brown calls angle, which is a spread pick and roll. Fox runs the pick and roll with Trey Lyles and he gets to the rim. But things get spicy on the next possession. During a stoppage of play in the beginning of the second quarter, Fox wanted Mike Brown to run a back screen on the left wing to counter the Warriors' top block defense. The Warriors' top block defense worked so well during this series because the Kings struggled to shake their individual defenders to get free. But when you put a second player in the potential triple handoff, that opens up a lot more options that can lead to confusion. Here, Kevin Huerter wants to set the back screen on Donte DiVincenzo, but he decides to cut to give Malik Monk more space. Since Monk is so out wide, he gets a running start into the paint, which forces Looney to help, and Sabonis gets a dunk. On the next possession, Huerter sets the back screen, which confuses Clay and DiVincenzo. This leaves Malik Monk open, and it puts the Warriors in rotation, but they recover well. The Kings continue moving, and they run the same action except it's on the top of the key with Lyle setting the screen and Huerter goes back door. This forces Looney to jump at Huerter, which opens up an offensive rebound for Sabonis, and he kicks it out to Monk for a 3. This time down, the Kings run it with Keegan Murray, and the Warriors do a great job switching these screens, but Sabonis is still left wide open and he drains the jumper. The Kings made this set a focal point of their offense in the second quarter, which helped them take a 58-56 lead into halftime. With a half to go in a series full of twists and turns, who was going to pull out the move that would put their team on top? To start the third quarter, the Kings went to their money play from the first half, but the Warriors were ready for it by switching the matchups to have Draymond on Sabonis and Looney on Barnes. Since Draymond's more nimble, he can react quicker to Huerter, who might cut, and Sabonis, who might roll. The Kings saw this early and decided to go 3-on-3, but Fox has a hard time driving on Wiggins. On the next possession, the Warriors go back to the original matchups by having Green on Barnes and Looney on Sabonis, which threw off the Kings as they went away from their money play. The Warriors started to slowly pull away by locking in defensively and forcing Sabonis to take shots that he normally can't make. But where the game really turned in the third quarter was on the offensive rebounds. The Warriors grabbed 13 offensive rebounds in the third quarter alone, mostly sparked by Kevon Looney. While rebounding is traditionally seen as related to hustle and grit, the Warriors had a real strategy to rebound effectively. I talked about this in another video, but what Looney does so effectively is make contact with his matchup, in this case Sabonis. He specifically pins his arms against Sabonis' back. Once he locates the ball's trajectory, he's able to use Sabonis as a springboard to jump much higher. Even though Sabonis is technically boxing out Looney, he's being pinned underneath the basket, so he can't jump to get the rebound, which allows Looney to get more positional leverage and increase his chances of getting more rebounds. On this Wiggins free throw, Looney uses the same technique, and notice how Sabonis can never get off the ground. The Kings coaching staff and players never figured out a true way to counter this. At the free throw line, Mike Brown yells at the Kings to box out, and Sabonis goes over to him to explain to him that Looney's jumping back and pushing to get the ball. So it's not the fact that the Kings aren't boxing out, but it's more so they were not sure how to keep him from moving to the ball. Sabonis eventually just started holding Looney so that he can't get off the ground, but Looney is so much stronger than Sabonis. Even when Kevon can't get off the ground, he's able to shed himself off of Sabonis and get the rebound. This completely sucked the life out of the building, knowing that the Kings didn't have answers, and the lead ballooned to 10 going into the fourth quarter. Now in games 4 and 5, the Kings were also down 10 and clawed their way back into those games, but this was different. Steph Curry was hunting for blood all game as he uses tight ball handling and strength to rip through any contact and navigate through traffic in isolation. No matter who tried guarding Curry, he was able to break them down and get to his spots. So with 12 minutes to go and the Kings desperately looking for answers, Curry shut down the beam by continuously dominating his individual matchup. To start the fourth, the Warriors go back to the short action and Curry gets into the lane and finishes over Sabonis. A few possessions later, Steph and Draymond run a dribble handoff and Curry finishes around Fox. Next possession, Curry hunts Keegan Murray and drills an insane three to put the Warriors up 17 and effectively end the series. In an all-time chess match with fantastic adjustments, Steph and Curry reminded us that sometimes it doesn't matter what you try to slow him down. While his three-point shooting gives him a supreme advantage, it's his ability to dribble through traffic, move the defense, and finish over others that makes him a true one-of-a-kind. The way that he can move defenders and get around heavy traffic made it impossible for the Kings to find any sort of solution. Curry made sure the ball was always in his hands because he knew that there was no way any King could keep up with him, and made sure that this series would end on his terms. And he did just that by scoring a record 50 points in Game 7 to close the final chapter on a fantastic series. If you guys are interested in more of this series, I will be releasing some YouTube shorts that cover some interesting things that didn't make this video. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.